Welcome. What I'm doing today is giving you a bit of a preview of my book, False Alarm: Global Warming, Facts versus Fears. My name is Paul McRae. There are certain people when you write a book that you want to thank, and among them are your family, who have to put up with endless monologues on one topic for years on end until the book is finally done. So I'd like to thank Sheila, my children, and many others. What we're going to do in the next few minutes is we're going to discuss some of the facts versus the fears in alarmist climate science, or what I call the alarmist climate science hypothesis, because it's not really a scientific fact. And we're also going to discuss how certain and settled alarmist climate science actually is. But first, a thought experiment. Let's imagine that we put some ice cubes on a table in this room and took note of how warm the room was at the moment. So let's say it's 70 degrees Fahrenheit. So 70 degrees Fahrenheit, we've put some ice cubes. We'll come back to that at the end of the talk. I also want to make a disclaimer. No oil money went into the making of this book or video. So one of the claims is always that people who are skeptical of global warming claims are paid for by the oil industry. I'm not. I wish I was, but I'm not. The other disclaimer is this. People who are skeptical of climate science, as it stands right now, are not necessarily people who want to destroy the environment. They're often people who love the environment and they want the environment to be better and think that money spent on trying to stop some kind of imaginary global warming climate thing should be better spent on various real pollution problems, real toxic pollution of air, water, and oceans, or air, land, and oceans. So I just want to say, like everybody else who's watching this video, I am an environmentalist. I care about the environment. I really do not want to be spending money on things that are not true environmental problems, and one of those is global warming, so-called. By the way, if you can't see it, this is a cute little picture of a Bambi baby deer touching noses with a fox. It's really cute. All right, here's the global warming fears. 1, the planet is warming. In other words, global warming is, as Al Gore likes to say, it's real. Second one is that human carbon emissions are the principal reason for warming. So if it wasn't for carbon emissions, we would not be warming right now. Thirdly, the result will be oblivion due to runaway warming. So the future that we face is a kind of catastrophe if global warming continues. So let's see. Those are the fears. Let's see whether or not the fears match up with the facts. Here's why I wrote this book. I wrote this book because I discovered that the climate facts, when you examine them, do not in any way match the fears. That's what we're going to be talking about for the rest of this time. So let's have a look at the fear that the planet is warming. First of all, the planet has been warming for 15,000 years, ever since the last glaciation ended and the ice melted. So there's no question whatsoever that the planet right now is in a warming phase. We're in what's called an interglacial. No question about that, and everybody agrees on this. By the way, the warming that occurred 15,000 years ago did not occur due to human carbon emissions, because humans hadn't even invented agriculture. The worst we had was campfires. The planet has warmed since about 1850, the mid-19th century. We came out of something called the Little Ice Age. The planet's been warming ever since then. Carbon emissions, not an issue in 1850. So the question you might ask is, well, if warming started in 1850 and the Industrial Revolution still wasn't underway, really, why did warming start then? Couldn't have been human carbon emissions. The planet is not warming at the moment. There's a fact that you may not know. They're certainly doing their very best to make sure that you don't know it. It hasn't warmed, on average, since about 1998. I'll show you some proof for that in just a moment. This, if you can see it, is a graph produced by the National Oceanographic Oceanographic and Atmospheric Administration in the United States, usually called NOAA. And what it is, it's a little gimmick on their website. You go to their climate section, and it allows you to check the temperature trend between any two dates, between 1895 and 2010. So here is, if you put in the dates 1996 to 2010, you'll end up with a flat line. Okay? Flat line. If you put in 1997, you get the graph that you can see here. In other words, you've got a slight cooling trend. If you take it to, say, 2002, look at the way the cooling has increased. The angle of the green line is steeper toward to the right and to the lower part. Here's what happens if you do it from 2005. So take a look at this. 1997, 2002, 2005. What that means is that over the last 12 years, the planet has been not warming, but on the average, cooling. And here's what the temperature record looks like if you sort of put it all together over the last 30 years, from 1980 on. And as you can see, there's a sort of a little bit of a cooling in 1985, and then it goes up and up and up and up. And then all of a sudden, around about the middle of after 2000, it begins to fall. So what strikes me about this is that for the last 10 years, and I may mention this again, but for the last 10 years, during a time when there has been no warming at all on average, we've been warned about warming ad nauseum. It's amazing to me. Anyway, how long have we known that the planet wasn't warming? Well, I found out about it in 2007, but here's what a guy called Phil Jones said in 2005. Phil Jones is the head of something called the Climatic Research Unit, East Anglia University in England. Top climatologist, keeper of one of the major climate records on the planet. The scientific community would come down on me in no uncertain terms if I said the world had cooled from 1998. Okay, it has, but that's only 7 years of data, and it isn't statistically significant. The question I have is this. If you're a scientist and you have data, facts, and you've discovered in 2005 that the planet hasn't warmed for 7 years, why wouldn't you tell everybody? Why wouldn't you just say, you know what, the planet hasn't warmed for 7 years? Instead, what he's saying is, we certainly don't want to say anything about this. Everybody would come down on me real hard. So, we haven't had warming for about 12 years. We're told the planet has been warming dangerously. The 2007 Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change report called the warming of the 21st century unequivocal. So we have a time when there's no warming on average, but the report that comes out in 2007, warming unequivocal. What data are they working from? Lately, we've been told the warming is accelerating. Now, I just showed you a chart. NOAA, it's not a skeptical organization, it's a warmist organization. From 2005 to 2010, the cooling is quite pronounced. In fact, you might even say the cooling is accelerating. Instead, what we're told is that the warming is accelerating. Will the planet warm again? Now, one of the arguments on this is, well, it's not warming now, but it's going to warm again. Of course it's going to warm again. It warms and it cools and it warms and it cools. That's part of the climate cycle. So yes, it's going to warm again. It might even warm quite a bit. Why? Because we're in an interglacial. I'll talk to you about that in a minute. Meanwhile, here's a fact, and this is a fact. The consensus alarmist climate science community has not been honest with the public about the real temperature trend over the last decade or more. They have definitely tried to keep us in the dark on this. Second inconvenient warming fact, fear human carbon emissions are the principal cause of global warming. And here's what Andrew Weaver, who's one of the top climatologists in Canada, has to say. The scientific community has a very solid understanding of what's causing global warming. It's overwhelmingly because of the combustion of fossil fuels. Okay? Couldn't be clearer. If it wasn't for our combustion of fossil fuels, the planet wouldn't be warming. Okay? Done. Settled. Oh, it's our fault. Gotta be. All right. Here's the facts. Planet's not currently warming, although carbon emissions and carbon levels continue to increase, and yes, we are one of the causes of this. No question about it. Here's another fact. Other human activities, apart from carbon emissions, fossil fuel burning, and so on, are also causing warming, including cities and agriculture. Agriculture releases an awful lot of methane, which is actually a more powerful warming agent than carbon dioxide. And cities, well, we've all been in cities. If you've lived in any city for any length of time, you know that it's a little bit warmer than the surrounding climate. When I used to live in Toronto as a child, there was snow everywhere. Now, it's rare to get a snowfall in Toronto, at least when I lived there. At least a major snowfall.